Well, those are headlines at this hour. This is the show where team at CNBC-TV18 gets to the top stories of the day. I'm Ned Rai. And this is our big story this evening. It's taken 5 long years, but the Goods and Services Tax Constitutional Amendment Bill has finally been passed today by the Lok Sabha. This wasn't without its share of drama. The Congress staged a walkout before the voting began. This landmark legislation will now have to be passed by the Rajya Sabha, where the government does not have the numbers. CNBC-TV18 learns from sources the upper house is likely to take up the GST Constitutional Amendment Bill day after tomorrow, that's the 8th of May. A lot of work still needs to be done, though, before the GST can be implemented across India and meet the deadline of 1st April 2016. The first issue, and the biggest one, is at arriving at a revenue-neutral rate which is acceptable to all stakeholders. The final bill, though, has been diluted from the one that was tabled last month. For example, key products like petroleum, tobacco products and liquor have been left out of the GST ambit. The centre has had to promise and reiterate that promise that any loss to the states will be compensated in full. The Finance Minister reiterating it will be done over 5 years.
In order to compensate the manufacturing state, once goods manufactured in their states go out, various protections have been granted to them. The first protection is that we have said for a period of 5 years, and that's a part of the Constitution Amendment, any loss suffered will be borne by the centre, and we will compensate the state. The second very genuine concern that some of the members have raised is that a figure was being floated that will it be 27% and 27%? The revenue neutral rate is going to be, and therefore the cost and the prices itself will go up. I straight away concede that 27% will be very high. The government or the GST Council has not given this figure. A particular organization in its own internal assessments did start regarding what is the revenue neutral rate. That will be one of the inputs. It got leaked out and somebody said it's 26.8. So that is how this figure of 27% was born. After this 27% was born, the states and the centre have decided for the present to keep alcohol out. We have decided to keep petroleum out. And then every state chief finance minister is not interested in imposing higher taxes on his own people. Neither is the central government. And therefore this figure is going to be much more diluted compared to the figure which has been mentioned. And these are rates which will be all decided by the GST Council itself.
There you go. That's the Finance Minister saying that the revenue neutral rate is not going to be as high as 27%. In the same speech, he also said the 13th Finance Commission had recommended 18%. So perhaps we're going to be somewhere in the middle. CNBC-TV18 Jitapan Abhiyan caught up with Virappa Moily. The Congress party, don't forget, staged a war. The government was wrong in rushing through the passage of that very bill in the Lok Sabha. Let's not forget, it's the upper house of Parliament where Congress could try and will try to corner the government, something that the Jay Panda of the BJT is also concerned about.
The GST, it is our proposal.
Right.
It's a very important reform.
Right.
That doesn't mean they have to distort and get it passed.
Right.
And it will ultimately land into, it will not take off.
Right.
And many a time it will result in disharmony between the states and states.
Right. So does it mean that in Rajya Sabha also it will get stuck, sir?
Wait for Rajya Sabha.
Yes, the BJT has always consistently taken a stand that we are for GST and in fact for all those measures which are good for the national economy and good for the state. On GST specifically, we had raised certain amendments and we had wanted certain more fine-tuning, you could say. But now that the bill came for voting, we supported the bill. All the parties take the same consistent stand as they did in the Lok Sabha. Then it may not be as uphill a battle as you might think.
Political reactions have been pouring in through the day. Now let's reach out to tax expert Rajeev Dimri, the head of Indirect Taxes at BMR Associates, now joining us live to talk a little more about the GST bill. Rajeev, thanks a lot for joining us on CNBC-TV18 and welcome to Reporter's Diary. The Finance Minister is saying that the leaked revenue neutral rate of 27% is too high. It will lead to inflation. Nobody wants such a high GST rate. It was going to be much diluted. In the same speech, then he spoke about the 13th Finance Commission recommending 18%. What, according to you, is going to be the revenue neutral rate that is doable?
I don't know if I have a specific number that I could quote, but yes, I certainly believe that 27 or high 20s is an unworkable solution. The finance minister had said earlier as well that the rate will be much lower than 27%. In a separate statement, I think he said it on the floor of the House. So I completely agree that the rate doesn't need to be that high. How that rate came out was one of a possible scenarios. There are multiple scenarios. You make assumptions, you make calculations, and one such calculation was 27%. It has never been affirmed as the decision by anybody, but it was being seen as one possibility, which is extremely high. And I completely agree that it has to be closer to 20, and if he's talking about a rate of 18, that's even better. Lower the rate, better of chances of compliance, better of chances of success of this tax, and therefore I agree that it has to be 20 or lower. That's a more workable number.
Okay, so you think it's going to be 20% or lower, so you think that the 18% recommendation of the 13th Finance Commission may also be stretching it?
That's true. It's also at some point in time the Empowered Committee's decision that the long stay tax should be 18%, and that's the number that has been floating for a period of time. Of course, it's possible that a particular number may not work for all the states, and hence this concept of compensation for 5 years is a great way to resolve that. Over a 5-year period, more data will get available to come up with a number, but 18 would be a great place to start, and 27% is setting yourself for a failure.
You know, when this GST constitutional amendment bill was first tabled, we all discussed that, how nobody expected the finance minister had been able to bring alcohol and petroleum within the ambit of the GST. Now it emerges that at the insistence of the states, that has been excluded. What's going to be the impact of that?
Well, let's put it differently. The fact that so there are two ways in which products can be excluded. Either they get excluded by specifically naming them in the Constitution Amendment Bill, which would be, the way the Constitution is written or will be amended. The other way is to keep them out as a matter of policy. The fact that alcohol was to be kept out of GST as a policy was always clear. It's not something that got announced today. It got clarified today. So it was meant to be out. So was petroleum. That while GST Constitution Amendment Bill will not specifically exclude it, but the way it has been designed and the way the policy is that it will be kept out for a period of time, and petroleum will come back into the GST, whereas alcohol for more than one reason will remain out of GST, and it's not something that happened today. That was always the going in position for a number of years. It just got clarified today more specifically.
So you think that, maybe it's going to take 5 years. That's also the time frame that has been provided to states to provide for all of the losses that will be incurred, perhaps to, build and bridge that trust deficit that everyone has been talking about? Well,
the concept of, whether there's a certain amount of nervousness as to how the state's revenue will behave post-GST introduction, because some of the rates on goods will fall at the state level, and tax on services will rise. For states to figure out how much of services are actually eligible to be taxed by them when it comes to services such as banking, insurance, telecommunication, transport, and therefore states understandably have a certain amount of nervousness as to what the quantum of their revenue would be. Petroleum represents an extremely high proportion of revenue for each state, and it is collected from a very small number of people. So it's a more certain tax, it's a high contribution to the state exchequer, and therefore there is a certain amount of nervousness and need to protect that revenue is understandable. I just hope that this period where they are getting comfortable with the trend of revenues and will bring petroleum into the full-scale GST, I hope that period is short and not a very long period.
My final question to you, Rajeev, is to do with that 1% additional levy. A lot of people are against it. There have been a lot of concerns that have been raised about it. Where do you stand as far as that goes?
I think it is something which is contrary to the design of GST. It is, as somebody once said, it is importing CST into GST, and therefore as a concept, it is contradicting the GST. It is perpetuating our existing system in terms of cost, in terms of the effect of cascade, and the nervousness that is it really there for 2 years because it can be extended. And it is that feature alone that is making the industry nervous. Even if it was specifically announced that it will be 2 years and no more, I think people will be less concerned about it as a concept. Secondly, there is a lot of clarity, because lack of clarity, where people have to move goods for more than one reason. There are movements from one place to another, then there are redistribution points, there are mother warehouses to regional and daughter warehouses, there are raw material movements. So this 1% might sound very small to a casual onlooker, but when you get down to looking at how many times products move, that 1% can quickly add up to a sizable cost. So it is a tax that ought not to be there. It is for a time period that could be flexible. GST Council can extend that time period to any number of years. And therefore, all in all, I wish should not have been there. If it needs to be there for a very small period of time, and today the Finance Minister clarified that it will only apply where the goods leave a manufacturing state, but one needs to see how that will get legislative and how it actually finds its way into the books, into the law books. But if they can remove it, that would be the great place to start, or at least significantly dilute on what activities that would apply. If it starts applying on every movement of goods, then it will be a huge burden on the industry.
Okay, Raju, that's all the time we have to talk to you on GST today. We're going to get you back to our studios once the Rajya Sabha decides the fate of that constitutional amendment bill. There's BMR and Associates saying that it's against that 1% levy, saying it's like CST creeping into GST. Thinks that the revenue neutral rate will perhaps be somewhere around 20% initially. The government may have managed to pass the GST constitutional amendment bill in the Lok Sabha, but has had no such luck when the real estate regulator bill